A quick thank you to all of my patrons. Your support is heavily appreciated.
プラネタリウムはいかがでしょう。どんな時も決して消えることのない美しい無休のきらめき、満天の星々が皆様をお待ちしています。プラネタリウムはいかがでしょう。どんな時も決して消えることのない美しい無休のきらめき、満天の星々が皆様をお待ちしています。プラネタリウムはいかがでしょう。どんな時も決して消えることのない美しい無休のきらめき、満天の星々が皆様をお待ちしています。
You know, I was never a person who particularly cared about stars. City lights usually make them hard to see, and even though I lived in the countryside, that still held true. Even then, I'd still say that they were nice to spot when you could, and I could see myself enjoying a bright starry night when light pollution ceases to exist. And now, the hope of seeing a bright starry night has become a little wish of mine. 'Cause now, I'm someone that appreciates the stars more than ever, and it's all thanks to one story. A story about a world beyond salvation. A story about a man discovering the beauty of the stars in such a world, and a story about a little robot. One with a dream of sharing the stars and stories they tell. Hello everyone, viewers new and old. Welcome to another visual novel and anime review created by the Manpig, and today, we'll be covering a short story that I hold close to my heart. Indeed, today, we'll be looking at Planetarian, the Reverie of a Little Planet. Planetarian is a visual novel created by Key, also known as Visual Arts. If you didn't know, Key is a game company known for making nakige visual novels, and if you don't know what a nakige is, it approximately means crying game. And well, that should be self-explanatory. Key works are recognized for their emotional resonance, and their most popular works include Canon, Air, Little Busters, and of course, the most well-known of all, Clanad. The last one should make you realize the level of feels I'm talking about. Yep, that's Key. And personally, I am a huge fan of the company. Pretty much on the same tier of Type Moon, in fact. This brings me to the story that we'll be talking about today. Planetarian is one of two short kinetic novels created by Key, and the first one of the company, period. A kinetic novel, if you didn't know, is a visual novel with no choices and only one linear route. And when I say Planetarian is a short one, I do mean that. Planetarian is only about a 2 to 3 hour read, meaning you can finish the whole story in just one night, compared to most other visual novels which usually clocking at the middle range double digits. Due to the length of the story, it admittedly does not have a lot of time to tell you much, and characters aren't as developed in comparison to a full-fledged series, nor would there usually be enough time to flesh out a world. So with these limitations, how exactly does Planetarian fare? And is it worth consuming despite its short length? Let's find out. In the near-distant future, the Earth has been desecrated by humans after a war that ravaged the planet. Now, the Earth is a harsh environment, with hostile mechanical weapons running amok everywhere. Moreover, toxic rain permanently falls from the skies as a result of the use of various bioweapons. The rain slowly kills all natural life, erodes the cities that mankind built, and blocks out the sky permanently. In such a world, we follow the perspective of a nameless junker, who goes to a city in search of valuables. It is here that he stumbles into a rooftop planetarium, and meets a robot girl who works there named Yumemi Hoshino, who welcomes him into the planetarium as a special customer. Yumemi urges him to stay and watch the planetarium projection in order to show him the beauty of the stars. That is the general premise of Planetarian, and honestly, it doesn't seem like much at first. How can a full story be told with such a simple concept? And how does it make you cry on the level of other Key works, which have time and development to make you care? Well, a simple thing you may figure out very soon when you read this is that quantity does not make quality, because Planetarian is a massive example of that. I will have to get things out of the way first. Due to length, the world is not explored in that much depth. There are a few questions you may have at the end of the story, and this isn't one that magically works around time constraints. It is still somewhat limited and only tells a small story inside a larger world. We're only shown glimpses into the backstory of the world and the backstory of the Junker, and those things aren't properly explored. So if you're expecting a full immersive world, specifically, Planetarian doesn't have one of those. But at the same time, I think such things are ultimately unnecessary, because Planetarian doesn't need to focus on any of that. The story at hand, the tale of the Junker, his meeting with Yumemi, and what he takes from the encounter was all that Planetarian wants and needs to tell. Besides, honestly in my opinion, the short runtime actually works to its favor instead, as it allows to cover a complete story without loose ends in a scope that it needs to, since it doesn't feel a need to add any excess parts or filler. And you know what? Even though it's not a complete world, I'd still say the world building is fantastic. Despite not covering everything in depth, you still get a full image on the world through short descriptions and the interactions between the characters. Through drip-feeding events, through mundane conversations, and the loose thoughts of the Junker, Planetarian successfully builds a believable world, and it's amazing how they did that. I can't help but be impressed by it. And as per usual with Key, it does have its fair share of emotional moments. In my opinion too, they only get stronger the more you re-experience them. At the time of making this video, I've experienced Planetarian 3 times. I watched the OVA first, then the movie, and then read the visual novel in that order. And each time, I cried more than the last, with my visual novel read ending up with an hour's worth of shed tears. Granted, that reaction could just be from me, but still, it's proof that Key can make a successful 2-hour Nakige to at least one humble person. And from what I've seen, I'm not alone. When it comes down to it though, what I think the best part of Planetarian's story is how it makes you think. Planetarian is ultimately a story that tackles the concept of humanity itself, and in the short amount of time it occupies, it manages to say so damn much. In its world, humans have already done the worst they could. They have wasted the planet, killed almost all life, destroyed everything they created, and lost everything they had. And despite that, despite being in a world like that, Planetarian dares to present the beauty of humanity in a world destroyed by those same beings, by us. Planetarian successfully shows the beauty and pride of humanity, and it really makes you think about us as a race. I'm not saying that the show is unrealistically positive, quite the opposite. There's always a sense of melancholy throughout the story because you're reminded that the world's state is extremely bleak, and in the end, the world won't change from this story, because why would it? It's just a small, short individual tale in a much bigger, broken world. Yet, when I finished, I couldn't shake the fact that I still felt, damn, humanity has so much beauty. Through stars, the legends that we created and associated with the stars above, the stories weaved and carved into the small dots in the night sky, Planetarian gave me a love for stars more than ever, and it was all executed so well. I also have to mention that Planetarian did get an anime adaptation, and I'm happy to say that they are both very good. First came the OVA, which simply depicts the story presented in the visual novel. Out of the 3 versions of the story, I'd say the OVA is the one least worth watching, as the most it adds are very brief anime original scenes in the beginning and the ending of the story. I'm not saying it's not worth seeing those scenes, but if you ask me, the OVA is overall invalidated because the movie exists. Planetarian's movie, Man of the Stars, pretty much shows everything in the OVA outside of the first and last anime original scenes. However, its caveat is that it's actually a double adaptation. Man of the Stars not only adapts Planetarian itself, but also a sequel story which originated as a drama CD of the same name. Now usually that'd be fine, but said sequel story doesn't come after the main story, and is instead spliced into the beginning, middle, and end of the story. This makes it a bit hard for the film to focus on one tale at a time, which in my opinion is a huge detriment on first viewing. It might not seem that much, but if you ask me, when it comes to Planetarian, you should really focus on the original story alone, at least for the first time, so consider that when you're watching. Despite the adaptations being good though, I still consider the visual novel to be by far the definitive experience, because you get far more insight into the thoughts of the Junker and the emotions as a result of the medium. For a story like Planetarian, that works a lot in its favor, and while I don't blame the anime for missing out on that, it's still a relevant point to bring up. As a result, in terms of watch order, I recommend reading the visual novel first and foremost, as that is easily the best start. After that, feel free to watch Man of the Stars, as in my opinion that movie works best as a complement to someone that's already familiar with the story. And if you watch it after reading the visual novel, you'll get to see the story fully visualized for the first time, all while avoiding the problems of the movie's dual story, and getting to consume the Man of the Stars epilogue all at once. It's a triple win. Also on the topic of Man of the Stars, it is ultimately an optional epilogue, and some people will consider it unnecessary. It all depends on how you like your endings. A good comparison is Fate Stay Night's last episode, as last episode and Man of the Stars both end on much more happier and thus satisfying notes. However, some may deem them unnecessary or prefer the lingering emotions of the original ending. It depends on your taste. Personally, my stance is, was it not a requirement? Yeah, sure, but am I thankful for its existence? Absolutely! I cried so hard! Ultimately, despite the short amount of time, Planetarian has so much to say and manages to convey it all beautifully. It doesn't overstay its welcome, nor does it feel overly slow. Sure, it doesn't cover a ton of ground, but it doesn't need to either. If anything, that short runtime works to its favor. It has so many messages about the nature of people, both revealing the worst while showing us the best in a convincing light, while tying everything to the story of just two characters. I come out of Planetarian with borderline no gripes and asking for nothing more. The fact I can say this, especially considering the length of the story, makes me proudly present Planetarian with a perfect 10 out of 10 score for the visual novel, and a slightly downgraded 9 out of 10 for the anime adaptations. Some may disagree with this, but I genuinely would not change a thing about the original visual novel story, and while the adaptations aren't flawless, I'm very happy they exist, especially Man of the Stars. That ending. Fitting of its length, Planetarian only really has a grand total of 2 characters through the entire story. While technically more people appear briefly, none are to the point you can say any of them are proper characters, so in terms of roster, Planetarian's is exceedingly small. However, once again, quality matters more than quantity. The characters of Planetarian only include the nameless Junker and Yumemi, and while neither are the most spectacular characters in the world, I'd say they both equally play their individual roles in the story just as good as the other. We follow a nameless Junker as our main character, and he has a tough, practical personality due to his nature of living in this dying Earth. The Junker works well as a way to both understand the world for the first time and grasp his situation. As a result, it's extremely easy to feel for him during the story and understand his perspective. I can't say he's the best main character I've ever seen, but what he has is solid, and I can't say he leaves me wishing for more either. I will say though that once again, his character is somewhat cut in the anime adaptation due to the medium change and the lack of first-person perspective. And honestly, that does detract from some of the overall thoughts that he experiences during certain scenes that the viewer would really do well to know. The other character, of course, is the little companion robot and cover character, Yumemi Hoshino. Yumemi is the only depicted character in the original story, and accurate to her model designation, she feels like somewhat of a companion to you. In fact, she appears on the side of the screen rather than the middle like your typical visual novel, which to me makes it feel like she's always by your side. Now, if you've seen my key heroines tier list that I posted on Twitter, you'd probably already know that I adore Yumemi. and that she's one of my favorite key heroines, period. Yumemi is, of course, a robot, and thus her existence is supposed to be just programming and automated functions. She does have an AI, but not one that's fully capable of learning new things and emulating a living being perfectly. She does ultimately feel and act like a robot, rather than a human in a robot body. But Yumemi's a little broken. She has a problem with her speech functions, which make her talk too much, and honestly that helps give her a sense of personality and individuality. Little quirks she has make her really feel like a living individual, even though she really isn't one. Yumemi is formal and polite, always doing her best to care for the customers, although due to lack of proper self-learning, she can't really grasp concepts and ideas outside of what she's programmed to know, which makes her feel somewhat dumb in certain interactions, and honestly, I think it's goddamn adorable. Yumemi makes for an extremely convincing innocent person who works hard despite not understanding everything, and I can't help but think that deep down inside her, she does have a soul. Due to her nature as a recreational support robot, Yumemi is blissfully unaware of the many problems in the world, and has a constantly positive outlook on everything since she can't really process the idea of negativity. Yumemi believes that it's her pride as a robot to serve humans, the people that created the world, and make sure that everyone is happy. She constantly remembers every positive interaction that she's had with people, and always wishes the best for them. She's very charming, and while you may be annoyed by her little stupid robotic nature, you can just as easily find yourself getting attached to her too. In the story, Yumemi truly shows you the appeal of the stars and the planetarium that she lives in, and why the stories they convey are all important. In this broken world, Yumemi's lack of proper cognition makes her able to share messages of the beauty of humanity, and also shows the hope that she has for us as a species. Her pure, innocent existence as a robot allows her to sow her dreams and hopes into the audiences that listen to her. It breaks my heart when I think about how people have already failed that hope. Ultimately, I love Yumemi a lot, and along with the Junker, I think these two characters do exactly what they need to for the story at hand. However, Planetarian itself also really lacks in variety, so if you don't find yourself enamored with either character, that becomes a huge detractor. So decidedly, I will give the characters a 9 out of 10 for the visual novel and 8 out of 10 for the anime due to the lack of conveying certain pivotal character thoughts of the Junker. I think the biggest strength of the characters is how they improve and complement the themes of the story, although in a way, I think both the characters and stories are intertwined in Planetarian. Full transparency. Planetarian's technical quality for the visual novel is very simple. You only get one character model, and again, that's Yumemi herself. The rest are just backgrounds and CGs, and even then, Planetarian isn't a case where the background covers the full screen, but rather instead it's windowed off most of the time. It's got the appearance of a very indie visual novel, which isn't good or bad, but just a fact. The art is quite nice. In fact, Yumemi's sprites are extremely well detailed and shaded beautifully. There's nothing particularly noteworthy from a visual standpoint, but you do notice the details. The same can be said for the anime as well. It's nice. The art has a clean, modernist art style while keeping in Key's iconic moe aspect for Yumemi. In fact, she actually has even bigger eyes in the anime than the visual novel. I will say, the animation isn't the best all the time. It's not awful, but certain scenes can feel a bit stiff. Also, a certain scene that I won't mention because spoilers, just wasn't done a lot of justice visually in comparison to the original visual novel, which leaves a slightly less impressive impact when watching. Overall, the art style isn't very noteworthy, but I can't say it's bad either. It's simply satisfactory. Although, the OST tracks, they are much more noteworthy, and this is the third review in a row that I've said this. I'm beginning to think that I'm more of an OST fan than a visual fan. Don't you? The OST of Planetarian is very small, but also just as memorable. The Loving Deaths elicits a curiosity to both Yumemi and her planetarium from the get-go. Song of Starflight is a very flexible song which has different versions in the visual novel to elicit different emotions. The Metronome version works really great for the cute moments that the Junker has with Yumemi and is very charming, while the same can be said for the Honky Tonk version. Although of course, My favorite version is the Winter Tales version, as it is the one that elicits the most emotion and beauty, which resonates a lot with me and the story. Speaking of emotion and beauty, of course I can't go without mentioning Gentle Jena. This track is by far the most memorable track in all of Planetarian for me, embodying the strongest emotions for the story and the world. The beauty of the stars, the world Yumemi shows, her little reverie, and of course, the emotional message left throughout. Gentle Jena is a track that just conveys it all, and as such, is my favorite. Overall, the technical quality of Planetarian is nothing that special to speak of, but it's not bad and works to its favor. I give it a positive 6 out of 10 for both the visual novel and anime. Neither do anything to write home about, but they're definitely fine and work very well. Planetarian is a story that, honestly, I didn't expect to treasure as much as I did. For the short amount of time this story occupied, I thought it was going to be good, but I didn't expect it to be this good. This story manages to say so much about both the worst things that humans are capable of, while also reminding us about our own beauty and pride. Through seeing the Junker discovering the sight and the stories of the stars, as well as Yumemi's precious innocence, her pride in serving the people, as well as her wishes and hopes for us, I felt that I, as a viewer, have changed just as much as the Junker did during this read. Combined with the memorable music tracks and a surprisingly well-built world, Planetarian tells a convincing tale that touches on these topics so well, and ultimately, I'm not left wishing more. Reading Planetarian was one of the best 2 hours I've experienced in my life, and in terms of keyworks, it has shot up to my top 3, just behind Little Busters and Clannad, which are already both stories I hold extremely close to my heart and consider masterpieces. So that says a lot to its quality. In general, I've always wanted to talk about key works because they have always been some of my favorite stories of all time, and out of all of them, I'm very glad that I chose Planetarian for my first key-related video. Compared to most other key works, Planetarian is very unique in both its setting, tone, and messages, yet it's still got the beating, emotionally driven heart that the company's other works are known for having. It's so short, but so beautiful, and a fantastic use of time. Consider experiencing this story if you want to experience a world and story that touches on the nature of humanity, both good and bad, hiding nothing while making you reminisce on our nature. If you also want to cry, oh boy, this story does its job as a nakige and will probably make you do that. Plus, it's just a 2-hour read and doesn't suffer for the length, so it's not long at all and easy to find time for. However, if you're not a huge fan of cute moe characters, specifically the ones that act a little dumb, you may have a bit of trouble accepting Yumemi. You also should remember the story is short and thus doesn't cover a lot of ground in its world. It has one small story it wants to tell. Also, as per literally any other key work, if you don't want to cry, don't read it. And also just avoid the entirety of key while you're at it until you're at least prepared to take the emotional pain. Overall, with everything being said, I'd like to mention how my verdict rating system works. Rather than how good a story is in comparison to others, I rate stories purely based on how much I would recommend them to someone else as a personal individual. Planetarian is not the most revolutionary story out there, and is quite small in what it wants to tell. However, for the length and for the level of beauty it has for the time it occupies, I proudly endow Planetarian with the recommendation of must read or watch. Planetarian occupies so little time, yet offers so much for what it takes. The amount of emotions and revelations I felt like I had when enjoying this story was more than how much I took from many far longer stories. Length is unnecessary to tell an amazing tale, and Planetarian is a prime example of that. When I consider everything, I find myself desiring little more from Planetarian, and while you could argue it's not perfect, nor for everyone, my stance will not change. This story gave me so much in just 2 hours, so how could I not recommend it? It was a fantastic visual novel, with 2 characters I ended up loving, and a story that made me gain so much appreciation for the stars. And it's also on Steam for cheap, so if you got a PC, read it! All in all, there's only one more thing left for me to say. Why don't you come and read Planetarian? The beautiful emotions of eternity that will never fade, no matter what. All the stories of the stars are waiting for you. With that, I hope you enjoyed my review on Planetarian, the Reverie of a Little Planet. I'd like to give a special shout out to my friend Lewis for providing screenshots of Planetarian's PC version because I actually don't have a PC and had to read it on a PSP ROM. Either way, I hope you look forward to whatever video I make next, and until then, farewell. I'll see you somewhere else on the internet.